Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I have been looking into various ways. Paul Chek, one of my mentors, as many of you know, most been on this podcast more than anyone else, has often talked about eating the rainbow. And I've also taken a deep dive into Dr. Stephen Gundry's work, The Plant Paradox, and I'm buddies with Paul Saladino, the carnivore doc. And there's a lot of information that kind of goes back and forth. Who do I listen to? Do I eat the rainbow? Do I not worry about vegetables and things like that? And the truth is, our ancestors knew how to prepare a lot of this food, right? Sally Fallon Morell gets into this in the book's Nourishing Traditions. Talked about that with Hilda Gore from the Wise Traditions podcast, and runs a podcast for the Weston A. Price Foundation. And there are many cultures that did just fine without a lot of vegetables. But if you're like me, a mixed bag does pretty well, and there's still then choices within choices. So if I know that greens serve me well, and I can tell by the best poop test is just how does my shit look, right? And this is all on how to eat, move, and be healthy. If I've got good poop, odds are my digestion's going well. And if I don't, then odds are it's not going very well. Something's missing. But even said, there are oxalates and lectins and all types of things that'll, anti-nutrients that bind with vitamins and minerals that you poop out, and lots of stuff that makes me want to stay away from quite a few of the plant kingdom. And yet, when I have a certain amount of greens, I feel good. So I've really been looking for the best greens. And I've been searching for Catharine without even knowing I was searching for Catharine. Catharine Arnston is the guest today. And she has taken a deep dive into all things algae, from chlorella, spirulina. Like many of you, the only time I'd ever supplemented with either of those was when I was at like a high-end smoothie bar. And, for an extra $5, I had them add blue-green algae or something like that, as a one-off. And I never really got to test it. I pride myself as a guinea pig from having tested things at the highest level. Even when I had retired from fighting and went to work at Onnit as director of human optimization, I was still in fight shape for the most part. And I would train as hard as I could on different products to see how they worked. How does this thing work at maximum effort from a fighter standpoint? How does it work, at not maximum effort, but held for extremely long duration, right? Like doing an ultra run, or extremely long form endurance, or nasal breathing only while I, row a 10K on a Concept 2 rower, and really seeing where the rubber hits the road and what works. And I can tell you right now, I waited to try any of these products from ENERGYbits, the spirulina or the chlorella. She's got ENERGYbits, she's got RecoveryBits. ENERGYbits are your in the morning product, and pre-workout, and RecoveryBits work on the other side of that. And I really wanted to know what I was taking first. So I didn't start taking any of this stuff until our podcast together. And I've been fucking blown away by it. I don't think there's many supplements that can compete with it outside of like glutathione and things we know for certain are going to aid in recovery. And even on the energy side of things, like I'm going for runs, I'm not getting tired. There's a lot of weird stuff happening. We just went to Black Sheep Boxing for boxing and kickboxing, and I've been training with the B3 bands, blood flow restriction. And I've been testing myself there. Workouts are only supposed to be 20 minutes, but when I go in for kickboxing, I'll keep them on for the whole hour. And I crushed the workout. I mean, absolutely crushed the workout and could keep going. And I really think, the only change that I've made is adopting spirulina and chlorella from this source. And you're going to find out exactly what's happening in the body when we take these things. And the fact that there's virtually nothing that is going to deter us or hinder us. There's no oxalates, there's no lectins, there's no stuff from the plant kingdom we wouldn't want. And maybe that's because it's not a plant. Algae is in its own, its own phylum. What do you call it that? I don't know if I'm reaching there or not, but it's its own category. Like fungi is not a plant, right? And so it is unique in that regard. And Catharine has been in this game for decades. She looks incredible. She's in her mid-60s, which I got to say, like, there's something to, Mark Sisson. There's something to Paul Chek. There's something to Gabby Reese and Laird Hamilton. And Gabby's not 60, so I don't want to lump her into the 60s group. I don't think Laird is, but Laird's in his 50s. And these people look like Greek gods. There's something to be said about what they're doing that gives them the body of a young person at that age that is worth tracking. A lot of people in the health and wellness, there's a ton of young V-shred guy who's fucking all over the place, right? I'm sure if you're like me, you've been caught up. I'm watching like ancient alien shit and fucking pyramid stuff on YouTube, and yet I still get the V-shred guy for every ad. So, and it's not to say that what he knows isn't worthwhile. He may know. I haven't even looked into it, but he's young. I like looking into the people that have stood the test of time. And Catharine has stood the test of time. There is no fucking doubt about that. She's got her health dialed, and you can see it. And then finally, Catharine Arnston from this amazing company is going to give you 20% off at the end of the show. Please go to her website. We have that linked in the show notes. It's ENERGYbits.com and code Kyle for 20% off everything in the store. Catharine, welcome to the podcast.
Well, so glad to be here, Kyle. We're getting close to Thanksgiving, so let's give some thanks for Mother Nature.
Yeah, absolutely. The arc of the show, I've got so much to dive into on this podcast with you here, especially as it relates to algae, spirulina versus chlorella, all this stuff, how that interfaces with the mitochondria. And for those that like science, we're going to get into the weeds here, which is great because I'm excited to geek out with you and really dive deep into all this information. But I always want to know, like, what made a person who they are today, what got them into this field. And, generally there's kind of a similar thread between a lot of people in health and wellness where they had lost their health through various reasons and had to find it on their own. But I'd love to get your own personal story.
Sure.
And you look fantastic, and you're an older woman. So talk about that.
I am older. Someone told me that, cougars are, I think, over 50 or 40, but I'm over 60. So they said that apparently over 60, if you're single, which I am, you're a jaguar.
Oh, baby, otorongo. I like that.
I'm a jaguar.
Well, I think about that. I look at you. I look at Paul Chek, who's 62, Mark Sisson, who's in his mid-60s. And the three of you look absolutely fantastic. And when people talk about health and wellness and anything fitness related, regardless, you have to walk the walk.
Exactly.
And so I love seeing somebody that's not only walked the walk, but has done it far further along than most people have. And most people throw in the towel in their 30s, 40s.
Oh man, I'm just getting warmed up. Are you kidding?
Yeah, you look incredible. So if you're just listening to this, trust me when I say this, Catharine is awesome. So this is great. Well, tell us about your road. Tell us about your road to get here.
Yeah, well, Algae, which is my company, ENERGYbits, that's what we sell, algae, spirulina and chlorella algae tablets. And it is a bit of an esoteric specialty. So I tell people I didn't choose algae, it chose me. And the way it happened was, first of all, I'm Canadian. I do live in Boston. I've been here 33 years, but all my family's still in Canada. I have an MBA from Canadian. All my education was in Canada. Anyways, I only mention that because 15 years ago, my younger sister, who I'm very close to, developed breast cancer. Now, I want everyone to know she's completely healed, and we celebrate her being cancer-free every year. But as she was preparing for her chemotherapy, her oncologist, which is a cancer specialist, told her to change her diet to an alkaline diet because it would be important for her healing. Now, they didn't tell her what an alkaline diet was or why specifically it was good for her. So my baby sister calls me, not that I knew anything about nutrition. I was doing international economic development. How dry is that? But I love my sister, and it turns out I'm a good researcher. So I said, I have no idea what it is, but I'll find out. And I did. It was basically a plant-based diet because of the phytonutrients and the chlorophyll that have been proven to build your immune system. So I found some foods for my sister. She did change her diet. She did go through chemo, and she completely healed. In the process of helping her, I started learning more about plant-based nutrition. Now, this was 15 years ago, and nobody was talking about plant-based nutrition. And by the way, anyone who's listening, if you're paleo or carnivore, this is for you too. And I'm not a vegan. I'm right in there with you, eating good choices of dietary protein. But the whole thing about plant-based nutrition hadn't even emerged yet. So as I learned about the importance of plants and the phytonutrients and things that are in there, I thought, man, somebody should tell the rest of the world about this. So I'm just a very passionate person. I thought, well, I have no nutrition background, but I'm going to do something. So I did give up my 25-year corporate career. I went back to school. I studied nutrition. And then I taught plant-based nutrition at hospitals and corporations. And this is where I truly got into algae, because as I was telling people the importance of eating vegetables, everyone said, oh, look, my mother's been trying to get me vegetables since I was a kid, but they're too much work. They're heavy to carry home from the grocery store, or they give me gas, or they have lectins and oxalates. That's for you paleo and carnivore folks, which algae doesn't have any of them. Anyways, there's so many reasons why they weren't eating them. They went bad. The kids wouldn't eat them. Their husbands wouldn't eat them. So I thought, okay, I have to find a way to get the plant-based nutrition into people in a way that is easy, because it wasn't easy for them with the current standard ways of doing it. Back to all the research I'd found for my sister, and that's when I got to algae, which turns out is the most alkaline food in the world, first of all, so that box was checked. It's also the most nutrient-dense food in the world. We have a quote from NASA, who, by the way, has been feeding it to the astronauts for 50 years. The quote says, 1 gram of microalgae, which is what we're going to talk about today, 1 gram has the same nutrition as 1,000 grams of vegetables. 1 to 1,000, that's pretty amazing. It's also the most scientifically studied food in the world. There's 100,000 studies documenting the various benefits we're going to talk about today. It's been used safely around the world, and in fact, in Asia for the last 60 years, they've been using it every day. It's a multi-billion-dollar agricultural crop there. So number one, it's a crop. Algae is not a supplement. It is a food crop, and it's grown in fresh water, not the ocean. And number two, it's been used daily for their purposes of longevity and health. And by the way, one of the Japanese live in some of one of the blue zones. The best thing about algae, though, was it turns out it comes in little tiny tablets about the size of a baby aspirin. And each one of these tablets has the same nutrition as an entire plate of vegetables. So now you can get all the nutrition you need. It has the highest protein in the world, highest chlorophyll in the world, highest nutrients, 40 vitamins and minerals, no lectins, no oxalates, no carbs, no sugar, none of the downside of anything to do with eating vegetables. And you can do it effortlessly. Most people do swallow them. I chew them. But each tablet has the same nutrition as an entire plate of vegetables. So while I'm talking to you now, I just had a plate of vegetables. How easy is that? You can give this to your newborns, to your teenagers, to your children, to your pets, to your grandparents. We recommend a starting point of 10 spirulina in the morning and 10 chlorella at night, and I'll explain the different algae and why you take it at different times. But this was a ground-shaking moment for me, that you could get all the nutrition that you need, all the green nutrition, the phytonutrients, and there are some nutrients in spirulina in particular that are not found in any other food in the world. And they have attributes like stopping heart disease and killing cancer cells. And I'd say those are pretty important things. So that being said, international endorsements used safely around the world for over 60 years, scientifically documented, absolutely effortless nutrition. I call it not only your nutrition insurance, but your health insurance, because when you take this every day, and every single person in the world should be taking this every day, honestly, you will prevent chronic illnesses, you will help correct any chronic illness, and it's effortless, easy peasy. Fast food has come to you. So that's why I'm so bullish about algae. It's nutrient dense, documented, at least ours is safe. We do third-party lab tests to prove the safety because we sell through doctors. But it's going to change the world. And even the United Nations endorsed it 50 years ago as the answer to world hunger because it has the highest protein in the world. So the only problem with algae is nobody knows about it, or if they do know about it, they misunderstood it. And so my job is to help you understand what algae is, why it is the perfect key that unlocks your health, particularly mitochondria health, and how to choose the best brand, because there are some nutrients that won't be found in some of the less expensive ones. So yeah, it's a rock star as I'm concerned.
This is great. This is great. And yeah, I remember, I've swung both ways from just about every type of diet. I've spent periods of time leaning vegetarian or even borderline vegan for plant medicine dietas when I was gearing up to go to the Amazon and drink ayahuasca, things like that. My body just doesn't do well there long. And at the same time, I've read books like Dr. Stephen Gundry's The Plant Paradox, and I'm friends with the carnivore doc, Paul Saladino, and I understand, the ideas behind that camp around oxalates, lectins, things like that. And, of course, the book, The Nourishing Traditions, by Sally Fallon, the Weston A. Price Foundation, a lot there on how to cook certain foods to remove that stuff. So that way they're more palatable and less damaging. But we're in a fast-paced world. We're looking for, really these magic bullets, and we find them in things like beef liver. We're like, oh, wow, yeah, beef liver. And then shellfish. You're like, damn, oysters are loaded. And then kale for a while was something like that until it was found that it contained a lot of these other things that people didn't want. Still, though, when we're eating, the reason to eat greens is they're drinking in the sun. Like, we're getting this photosynthesis that's taking place, and something is happening there. And when I eat grass-fed meat, they've taken that for me and changed that into a protein that I could consume in a much easier way. But I've always been drawn to this because there is something here where, and I'm sure you'll dive into the reason of the crack cell, all these things on what makes it a little bit easier to digest. But there's a lot we can get from that. Break down some of the differences here. There's key differences within microalgae versus macroalgae, spirulina versus chlorella. I really don't know the difference between any of this stuff. So
nobody does. That's why I've been doing what I do. And I've been researching this now for 13 years, almost 14. So I'm going to try to give you and your community in an hour, 14 years of research. But what I will tell you in the 14 years of researching, comparing all the nutrients in algae and then looking at all the PubMed metabolic health studies, and I've read about 3,000 at this point, I haven't found one single thing about algae that contradicts anything else that I have read. So, and usually when you're trying you're trying to decide whether something's true or not, you find something, and then that raises questions. Not a single thing. So I'm eager to share all this knowledge. And what I'd like to start off with is telling you that, first of all, algae was the first life on Earth, not just the first plant, the first life. And you can only be the first life once. It was 3.4 billion years ago, and we've only been on Earth about 2 million years. So algae predates us by a very long time, and I think there's something spiritual about it. But more importantly, and I'll show you some evolutionary history later on about how that first life, which was a cyanobacteria like spirulina, evolved to become our mitochondria. And as you learn from the rest of this podcast, when we get to the mitochondria, that's where the rubber hits the road. Everything that has to do with your health is based on your mitochondria. And so preserving, protecting your mitochondria is your number one job for maintaining your health and your longevity. So algae was the first life on Earth. It was a cyanobacteria like spirulina. And then a billion years later, plants started forming like chlorella, which does belong to the plant kingdom. But in general, algae is a food category. It is not an animal, and it's technically not a plant. It's its own food category, sort of like fungus. And the two main categories are macroalgae and microalgae. Just so you know what macroalgae is, it's that stringy stuff that washes up on shore, also known as seaweed or dulse or kelp. It's only in the sea, and it has lots of high fiber, but virtually no nutrition. It also has high iodine because it's from the ocean. So high fiber, low nutrition. Microalgae is the complete opposite. It has either no fiber or virtually no fiber, the highest concentration of nutrients in the world, and it's everywhere. Yes, it is in the sea, but it's also in the rivers, the lakes, the streams, the soil, your swimming pool, your aquarium, everywhere. And within microalgae, you have two main categories, blue-green and green. One type of blue-green algae is spirulina, which we'll talk about in a minute. And the other one example of a green algae is chlorella. Now, the reason why spirulina is called a blue-green algae is because it has two pigments in it. The blue one is called phycocyanin. I'm going to hold up a sheet so I'm going to spell it for you. Phycocyanin. You've probably never heard of that pigment before. It does not exist anywhere else in nature.
I was going to say, is that similar to what's in blueberries, or is
Nope.
that a different?
No, No,
Gotcha.
it exists only in spirulina. And when we get into the mitochondria health issue, I'm going to tell you some pretty crazy stuff about what that phycocyanin blue pigment does. The other pigment in spirulina is chlorophyll, which you are familiar with. It's a green pigment. Chlorella only has the green pigment called chlorophyll. So those are the two main algae. There's also red algae, but if you go to Costco or Whole Foods or come to our website, ENERGYbits.com, those are the two main algae that you see everywhere, spirulina and chlorella. By the way, if you see an algae bloom on your beach, and this is the only way people generally first hear about algae is it's the stuff that closes their favorite beach. Well, it's not spirulina. It's a type of algae. It might be another blue-green algae, but it's not spirulina. Spirulina is harvested in fresh water as a food crop. And by the way, that algae bloom only shows up because there's bacteria or toxins in the water. Now, you can't see the bacteria or toxins, but algae is the cleanup crew. It comes in and it kills bacteria and it gets rid of toxins. And it does the same thing in your body. And we'll get to that in a minute. But just to recap, it's the spirulina and chlorella that we're talking about is grown in fresh water. We grow ours in triple filtered spring mountain water in Taiwan. Then it's air dried into a powder, and we dry it without high heat, which you're going to find out is really important because it preserves some very important nutrients that protect your mitochondria. And then we press them into these little tablets that we call bits because they're bits of nutrition. And again, one tablet has the same nutrition as an entire plate of vegetables. So if you're paleo or carnivore, you just don't like vegetables, or you don't have time for vegetables, or your kids won't eat them, or your husbands won't eat them, this is your answer because you get all the nutrients found in vegetables without any of the work, no lectins or oxalates, no waste because we have a 3-year expiry date on our algae, although technically it never goes bad. Vegetables, my arugula goes yellow after about day 3 because it doesn't have much chlorophyll in it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Algae has the highest concentration of chlorophyll in the water. So very efficient nutrition and effortless. For those of you who do intermittent fasting like me, 0 carbs. And we're going to find out, I'll talk in a minute about the 2 different algae because you generally want to start your day with spirulina. We call ours ENERGYbits because it gives you energy in the moment, mentally, physically, and also at the cellular level. And we'll get to that in a minute. But there's so much nutrition in these. We sell them in large bags of 1,000 tablets. I did that. I took that quote from NASA that 1 gram of algae has the same nutrition as 1,000 grams of vegetables. And I figured out there's 551 pounds of nutrition in every one of our bags, not the fiber, but the nutrition. So again, very, very efficient nutrition and effortless to take. It doesn't repeat on you like fish oil. In fact, spirulina can replace a fish oil. A multivitamin will and if you want me to, I can get into the difference between the 2 algae. But just to recap, very concentrated nutrition, spirulina and chlorella, very different types of algae. You take them for different purposes, and we'll get to that in a second.
That's phenomenal. Well, I mean, just dive right in because this is great. I'm learning a lot right now.
Okay,
I'm excited because I've got a little bit in the cupboard there, so I almost want to run.
All right, we'll get you some more
too. I was just saying, hell yeah.
So spirulina is a blue-green algae because it has that blue pigment in it. And as I said, we call ours ENERGYbits because it gives you energy. How does that work? Well, both algae have the highest concentration of protein in the world. Spirulina has the most, 64% protein. That's 3 times the amount of protein as steak. And what's really important is that the protein in algae, particularly spirulina, is all in individual aminos. When you eat animal protein, it's all bound up, and it can take days for your body to break down into aminos because that's how your body will absorb it. So animal protein's all bound up. Collagen protein are in peptides, which are clusters of aminos, but algae is in individual aminos. And you say, well, what's so important about that? Well, what that means is it's easy for your body to get access to it. You may eat 50 grams of animal protein. It could take 2 days for it to get broken into aminos, and you end up maybe on average absorbing 10% as aminos. So 50 grams of protein may only give you 5 grams of aminos. When you eat 30 of our tablets of spirulina, maybe this could be lunch, for example, It has 5 grams of protein, which gives you 5 grams of aminos. Because all the aminos are individual, they get absorbed instantly, and because spirulina is a bacteria, it does not have a cellulose wall, so it gets absorbed instantly. It's loaded with B vitamins, and B vitamins convert the protein into energy for your brain, for your body. We fuel NHL teams, Olympic teams, marathon runners, triathletes. We have people going on ultra runs. They do 100 miles, and all they use is the spirulina and water. So spirulina, very energizing in the moment, and very satisfying. We work with doctors who have gastric bypass patients. They can't get enough, they get sick because they can't get enough nutrition from food because they can't eat much food because their stomach is so small. The spirulina is the answer because it's so concentrated with protein and other nutrients. People who are on taking Ozempic, doctors are now getting them to take the spirulina for the same reason, because you may not be eating, but that means you're also not getting the nutrients your cells need. You may not know this, but we have over 30 trillion cells in our body, and every day 30 trillion die and 30 trillion new ones grow back. But if they don't have the building ingredients to make strong cells, then you don't have the strength to have a healthy body. So this is why I call spirulina in particular your health insurance, because it gives your body everything it needs. 0 carbs if you're diabetic or you're losing weight or you're doing intermittent fasting. This is the answer. If you're carnivore or paleo, no lectins, this is the answer. If you just don't like to eat vegetables or and you don't want to take time to eat a meal, this is your answer. You could survive on it indefinitely because it's so nutrient dense. We're not suggesting you do that, but it's sure better than grabbing a carb or a loaded snack or a sugary snack if you're in between meals or in traffic or you're traveling. People love to take this stuff when they're traveling. So spirulina, very nourishing and satisfying for your hunger and gives you energy in the moment. But the real cool thing about spirulina is that it gives you cellular energy. Now, how is this different from the regular energy, and how is this different from a stimulant? A lot of people use sugar or caffeine or carbs for a stimulant. I wrote a short summary, which I'll send to you, Kyle. What is the difference between cellular energy and a stimulant? A stimulant speeds up the molecules moving from your brain to your body, so you get a rush of energy, but you also get a crash. Algae doesn't do that. A stimulant is like putting a paper on a fire. You get this burst, right? Burst of flames. Well, think of algae as putting a log on the fire. It's a slow burn. Now, how does it do this? Well, we're going to go in deeper dive into the mitochondria, but one of the things I want you to understand is that cellular energy is necessary for everything that you do. We're not talking about just running an errand to the store or going for a great run. This is walking, talking, breathing, your lymphatic system, your heartbeat, your neurotransmitters, your digestion. Absolutely everything requires cellular energy. And if you don't have enough cellular energy, nothing in your body works optimally. We're getting close to Thanksgiving, so here's a great analogy. Think of cellular energy like pie. Now, if you only have one pie and you have 1,000 people that want a slice of that pie, nobody's going to get a very big piece, and everybody's going to be upset and angry with you. So when you increase cellular energy, it's like having now 1,000 pies. For having 1,000 people being satisfied with their slice, they may get a whole pie. This is what happens in your body. When you have more cellular energy, every part of your body performs better because it's getting what it needs. Your neurotransmitters get what they need. Your immune system gets what it needs. Your sleep function, everything works better. And spirulina is proven to help that happen. And how it does it, we'll get into the geeky part in a minute, but it does it by protecting your mitochondria because they generate your cellular energy. And in fact, it's the mitochondria DNA within the mitochondria that are responsible for everything. So not only does spirulina give you energy in the moment because the B vitamins convert the glucose, so your brain wakes up, it's also loaded with essential fatty acids, but it generates cellular energy that work on a long-term basis. Again, think of it as a log on the fire, not a bunch of paper on the fire. So you can see it's steady energy. In fact, with algae, there's no drama. In fact, if you first take it, You may not even notice that you have any increased energy because it's so subtle. Your mind will just be more alert. You won't be hungry. You just won't have any fatigue. On the other hand, if you take it before you do a run or a workout, you'll lift more, you'll run further or faster, and you won't even notice it. This is the beautiful thing about cellular energy. It goes where it's needed. So because spirulina generates more cellular energy, if you go for a run, you're going to have a better run. If you decide that you want to go to bed, you're going to have a better sleep because your cellular energy is being directed to that particular function of the moment. It's like having more money. If you have more money, you can do more things and you have more choices. When you have more cellular energy, you can do more things and have more choices. So everything you do from now on, now that you know about this, is to improve your cellular energy. And how do you do that? By protecting your mitochondria. And we'll get to that in a little bit of a deeper dive once I've covered chlorella. So spirulina, nourishing, energizing in the moment, also later at the cellular level. And just a little, prelude of what's coming. Your brain has the most mitochondria in your entire body. There are 2 million mitochondria per cell. That's a lot of mitochondria. This is why when you take spirulina, one of the first things that will improve will be your brain functioning. And in fact, there's a terrific book that was published last year by Dr. Chris Palmer. It's called Brain Energy. And in the book, he talks about how every brain disorder, whether it's post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, doesn't matter what it is because of damaged mitochondria. So when you take spirulina, the first thing that you're going to start improving will be your brain because it has the highest concentration of mitochondria. The second highest is women's eggs, and the third is your heart, and we'll get to the heart. But basically, you have the most mitochondria where your greatest energy needs are, which makes sense because that's what they do. They generate energy. So think of spirulina as brain food. And that will contrast to chlorella, which is my next segue to talk about it, because it works on your gut. And if you have to have your head in the sand, if you haven't realized that gut health is very important to your longevity as well. And we'll talk about how they work together. So chlorella, let's talk about spirulina's brother, chlorella. It's a green algae. Spirulina's claim to fame is that it has the highest protein in the world. Well, chlorella has the highest chlorophyll in the world. Chlorophyll is a pigment, just like the blue pigment in spirulina. So what's so important about chlorophyll? Well, number one, it builds your blood. I'm going to show you a picture here. This is the chemical composition of chlorophyll, and this is the chemical composition of your hemoglobin. They're virtually identical. The only difference is chlorophyll has a magnesium atom in the middle, and your blood has an iron atom in the middle. That iron atom in the middle of your hemoglobin is what allows your blood to carry oxygen. And oxygen is critical for absolutely everything. So number one, chlorophyll builds your blood. This is why for centuries they used to use liquid chlorophyll for injuries, surgeries. During World War II, if they ran out of blood for transfusions for the injured, they would give them liquid chlorophyll orally, and they would heal just as fast as if they'd had a blood transfusion. And this is why. So chlorella has the highest chlorophyll in the world. And it's called chlorella because of the chlorophyll, if that helps you at all. So number one, when you have healthy blood, you're going to have healthier brain, healthier gut, healthier everything. So that's number one, builds your blood. Number two, chlorophyll is a fat-based pigment. I didn't mention it, but the blue pigment in spirulina is a water-based pigment, and we'll talk about the importance of that in a minute. Why is the fat-based pigment of chlorophyll important? Because your cells have a membrane around them all. It's called a lipid membrane. It's a fancy word for fats. So that's why you take vitamin E or D3 or omega-3 to build those cell membranes. Well, chlorophyll is a fat too. So it builds your membranes just like they do. So it's very cleansing and healing. Lots of people do juice cleanses and with greens, and a lot of what's going on is the chlorophyll is healing the cell wall. And when your cell walls are permeable, nutrients can get in and toxins can get out. And the way I describe it to people is like, well, think of chlorophyll like you would like a window washer. You know, when your windows are dirty, you can't see out and sunlight can't get in. So think of chlorophyll as having scrub-a-dubs on your cell walls so things can go in and out. So that's number 2. Number 3, chlorophyll kills bacteria. That people still use it topically. It kills bacteria in your mouth if you chew it. It kills it in your gut, in your colon. And this is very important because you want to make sure that you have get rid of all the bad bacteria and encourage healthy bacteria, which chlorella also does because it does have fiber. It has a hard cell wall. Spirulina has 0 cell wall. It's a bacteria. Chlorella is a plant, does have some fiber, not a lot, but some. And that hard cell wall attaches to toxins, heavy metals. It chelates them. Spirulina is cleansing, not detoxing. Chlorella, which is why we call our chlorella recovery bits, because it helps you recover your health. It pulls out lead, mercury, radiation, aluminum, alcohol, in case anyone's interested. Athletes love it because it also pulls out lactic acid. So chlorella is very detoxing and cleansing. That fiber also feeds your gut biome, which needs fiber to create what's called short-chain fatty acids, which help to bring healthy bacteria into your gut. And this combination helps build your immune system. Chlorella has 40 vitamins and minerals in addition to the fiber, the high chlorophyll, has nutrients like K2, which we can talk about. Very, very cleansing, very, very healing. So it's very much a recovery algae, whereas spirulina is very much a nourishing, energizing algae. They've used chlorella for decades for pulling out mercury. When we work with biological dentists who give it to their patients after they've had their fillings removed. The United Nations used it after Chernobyl when there was so much radiation. It was used after the Fukushima disaster in Japan. The entire global supply of chlorella was bought up within 24 hours because it's the only thing that will pull out radiation. So the science is there that proves all these things that chlorella does. And it has, back to the chlorophyll, it has 25 times more chlorophyll than liquid chlorophyll. A lot of people are taking liquid chlorophyll, which is great. But chlorella has more chlorophyll than liquid chlorophyll, and it has protein, 40 vitamins and minerals. So don't cheat yourself by taking liquid chlorophyll. Take chlorella and get all the extra goodies as well. Now, if you're trying to, still wrap your head around the difference between these two different algae, I came up with this fun analogy because I speak at a lot of conferences that are in fancy hotels. So I came up with the realization that because spirulina is so nourishing and gives you everything you need for your day, it's kind of like room service. At a hotel, you get everything you need and out the door you go. Well, that's what spirulina does for you. And chlorella, because it pulls all the junk in your trunk out, it's very cleansing. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we generally recommend you take it at night before bed. You can take it any time of day, but definitely before bed. Because when you are sleeping, that's when your body goes through a detox repair cycle. This is when your brain shrinks a little bit and you have something called the lymphatic system that cleans out any metals that might be there. This is when you have repair going on. This is why sleep is so important, because if you can't get into deep sleep, your body will not be able to heal itself and repair. By the way, chlorella has the highest tryptophan in the world, which is a precursor to melatonin, so it also helps you with your sleep. So because it's so cleansing, I thought, it's sort of like housekeeping. Late in the day, the housekeeping comes in at the hotel and gets rid of all the stuff you don't want. So spirulina is like room service in the morning, and chlorella is like housekeeping at night. And another way to remember it is because spirulina is very healing to the mitochondria, and your brain have so many mitochondria, think of spirulina as brain food. And because chlorella heals your immune system, provides fiber for your gut, and is very cleansing, this is very much a gut algae. So brain food, gut food. And by the way, there's something called the vagus nerve that connects the two of them. And as you heal your brain, you will start to heal your gut. And as you heal your gut, you will start to heal your brain. So you can start to see how the two of them are like bring you back your superpowers. They do completely different things in your body. Again, we recommend the spirulina. You can have either one of them any time of day with each other, with food, instead of food. Doesn't really matter, but just take them. In fact, the other day I was telling people, if someone offered you a trust fund, would you turn it down? I don't think so. This is like a trust fund for your body. This gives you absolutely everything you need to nourish your body, bring it to optimal health, protect you from anything that's going on. This pulls out toxins. This gives you the nourishment, and will help you get to a longer life. But it's not just living long, it's living well. And all you need are 10 tablets in the morning of spirulina, 10 of the chlorella for wellness. For detox, you do need closer to 30. And I don't tell people anymore how many I take, because I eat them both all day long, and I eat very large quantities. I do eat real food, but I generally eat now just one meal a day. I get to about 4 o'clock, and the algae keeps me going. And it's probably too much information, but my poop is green, and so will yours be if you eat a lot. But it's a badge of honor, because it just shows that the chlorophyll is doing its stuff and working its way down there. So don't be distressed if the same thing happens to you.
Well, that's fantastic. It's been a riddle I've been trying to wrap my head around, because I do enjoy, Paul Chek is one of my mentors, as I've mentioned many times on this podcast, and a very close friend. And one of the things he recommends is to eat the rainbow. And he talks about, the different nutritional pieces from that. And oftentimes I don't feel good with certain greens. I just haven't felt that way in a long time. But I am excited, and a lot of this makes sense, and it makes sense for other reasons. It makes sense because of my understanding on fasting, intermittent fasting, ketogenic diets, all the things that brings about from a benefit to the mitochondria. So I would love to know how this all unfolds into mitochondrial health, because that's something I've been really, really geared up on and gassed up on for the last 10 years, especially since finishing my fight career and needing to repair my brain tissue and all that stuff from all the lumps in the noggin I've taken. It can't be overstated how important our mitochondrial health is. So I'm very excited to see how this all pairs with it.
Yeah.
And I love what you've stated so far. This has been awesome.
Okay, we're getting into the good stuff now. And so, as you're going to find out, I tell people, I never eat alone. I always eat with my mitochondria, and so do you. And now, as you're going to learn what they do for you, it's sort of once you know something, you can't unknow it. So hopefully this will empower you and get you going down, get your health turned around if you have some issues, or protect what you have if you don't. So first of all, mitochondria, they're known as they generate all the powerhouse of the cell. They generate all the cellular energy that you need to do absolutely everything. You don't have any cellular energy, you won't be living. It's really that simple. And it's called ATP because that's just the format that the cells generate it, how they generate. And I'll walk you through how it's actually generated once we get there. But I want to give you a bit of a science lesson first. Okay, so here's your cell. And inside your cell, you have your nucleus and a bunch of other stuff. And you have these little mitochondria. They're like shown as sort of like peanut-shaped things.
Little beans.
Like little beans, right. Now imagine again, in your brain, there's 2 million of these per cell. That's a lot, right? So inside the mitochondria, this is where your ATP is produced. That's what cellular energy is, ATP. Now, what somebody's even if you've heard about ATP, what you've probably never known is that a byproduct of ATP are free radicals. Now, you know what free radicals are. They are an atom with an unpaired electron. And so nature strives for harmony. And so if something's unpaired, like the electron, free radical, it's motivated to go steal an electron from another molecule. And then that molecule is damaged, and now it has an unpaired electron, so it will steal somebody else's electron to seek balance. Think of it sort of like being in the lunchroom when you're a kid and someone stole your lunch. So then you go and steal someone else's lunch, and then they steal someone else's lunch. And so this is how you get into a cascade of damage. So free radicals are very damaging to your cells and to your health, and most notably to the mitochondria. So when you're generating all that ATP, you're also throwing off a lot of free radicals. And here's the real problem. You didn't probably know this, but your mitochondria have their own DNA. Yes, you have your regular 22,000 DNA, but your mitochondria have their own. There's only 37 of them. You think, oh, how important can 37 be? Well, let me tell you, those 37 control the other 22,000, and they control all the communication that goes on between them, between all the cellular communication of your cells. They're like the air controller at an airport. Oops. if your air controller is having a bad day, planes would crash, right? Well, when your mitochondria DNA get damaged, your health crashes. And here's why. Your DNA, like I said, are located inside the mitochondria, which is exactly where the ATP is produced and therefore also the free radicals. Now, your regular DNA is way over in the, I don't have it handy, the cheap seats. It's nowhere near inside the mitochondria where the DNA is. So they last a lifetime. Your mitochondria DNA lasts an average of 10 days because they're constantly being mutated, burned, and killed by the free radicals. The most damaging free radical is produced in this process of ATP. It's called superoxide. And I was curious, like, why was this particular free radical so damaging? Well, I read out and found out that superoxide has 3 of those unpaired electrons. Normally there's just 1. It has 3. So it's 3 times as damaging. And we're going to talk about in a minute something called superoxide dismutase, which neutralizes that free radical and turns it into water. The problem is it's not available in food. Your body doesn't make it after the age of 30. And so spirulina is your sole source, but it's an enzyme too. And if anyone's used any high heat, like most companies do to dry their algae, that particular antioxidant is deactivated, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So again, in your mitochondria, this is where the ATP is produced, also where the free radicals are, but where your DNA, your mitochondria DNA are. And so because they're damaged, they start sending wrong signals out. By the way, I'll mention in a few minutes, the mitochondria are the only cell in your body with 2 membranes. Remember earlier I mentioned that all your cells have a lipid membrane? Well, your mitochondria has a lipid membrane around it as well. But if you look closely, there's a second inner membrane in there. Why is that important? Because virtually nothing can get in there. No other antioxidants, not vitamin E, not vitamin C. You could eat a room full of blueberries, not a drop of antioxidants will get in there. Drugs can't get in there. There are only a few antioxidants that can get in there to stop this free radical damage. And fortunately, as you're going to find out, they're all in the highest concentration in algae. I'll just tip my hand, but they're chlorophyll, superoxide dismutase, and glutathione. So now that you know that your free radicals are damaging your mitochondria and your mitochondria DNA are what control everything, we've got to figure out a way to stop the damage, right? So there's 2 ways. So that's the good news. One is to reduce the free radicals, number of free radicals, and number 2 is to remove them. And you've already alluded to a couple of them, a couple of things. One is doing a keto diet or fasting. So let's jump right to that. When you are eating processed carbs, so white things, sugar, they release a huge amount of free radicals. Now, when you go on a keto diet or a low carb diet, you have fewer free radicals. So automatically there'll be less damage to your mitochondria DNA. But when you do intermittent fasting or you take algae, there's virtually no free radicals. So that alone is a strategy that you can pursue that will protect your mitochondria instantly, okay? Because you want to reduce the free radicals, and then now we want to talk about removing them. All right, so when you remove them, the problem is, or trying to remove them, like I said, there's that inner membrane. It's like a ICE unit at a hospital. Virtually nothing can get in there. It's in lockdown. The 3 antioxidants that can get in there are glutathione, superoxide dismutase, also known as SOD, and chlorophyll. So why is it that no other antioxidant can get in there? Well, the inner membrane does not have something called porins. All your other membranes that are lipid have these little things called porins. They're sort of like windows that allow things in and out, but there aren't any porins on that inner membrane. And I'm going to explain to you in a few minutes where that inner membrane came from and why it is there. So the fact that spirulina and chlorella to a lesser extent have the highest concentration of antioxidants that can get into that inner membrane to stop free radical damage is a godsend. One of them, as I mentioned, is called superoxide dismutase. And what it does is it turns all those free radicals into harmless water. Ta-da! Problem solved. No more free radicals. They're turned to free water. It's into water. It's like having a fireman in there hosing down all the free radicals, which are damaging and causing fire. In fact, it's a great analogy. You know, if you've ever sat too close to a fireplace or a bonfire, you might have sparks that fly and burn you. So think of those free radicals as sparks. They're being released during the ATP production, and because your mitochondria DNA are located right there, they get fried and they get damaged and they get killed. But this antioxidant called superoxide dismutase puts out the fire, removes the free radicals. But here's the problem. That superoxide dismutase is also an enzyme. And so enzymes are killed by high heat. And you can't find superoxide dismutase in food, and your body stops making it for you at the age of 30. Now, you probably don't know this, but your body makes superoxide dismutase from the moment you're born until about the age of 30. And then by the time you're 40, you have virtually none. And by 50 or 60, absolutely zero superoxide dismutase. So here's the interesting thing. Mother Nature was well aware of this problem with the free radicals. So she gave us superoxide dismutase to protect the mitochondria from free radical damage. Problem is, your body stops making it after the age of 30. I researched that and I found out it's because up until just the last 100 years, we only lived till 30. Our bodies have not caught up with the reality of our current lifestyle. It thinks we're going to die at 30. So all these protective nutrients like superoxide dismutase, by the way, your body also stops making melatonin after the age of 30 or 40. This is why you have a hard time sleeping as you get older. And when remember I said, if you can't get your sleep, you aren't able to get into a repair state. So because our bodies don't make superoxide dismutase for us after the age of 40, and because you can't get it from any other food, I believe this is one of the main reasons why chronic disease is hitting everybody after the age of 40, because our mitochondria do not survive the onslaught of free radicals, and therefore they reduce the amount of ATP that they're producing. And when we have less ATP, we have less cellular energy, and we have less cellular energy, we have less pie to share with our brain, with our lymphatic system, with our immune system. And this is why you get into this downward cycle of disease after the age of 40 and 50. And it's very hard to recover. I want to show you something because it's sort of interesting because how this whole thing transpires, this whole ATP production process. I have something I was going to show you, but inside the mitochondria, the energy is produced by something called the electron transport chain. And think of it as a relay race. You've probably seen runners on relay race. Somebody runs and they have a baton, they pass it to the next runner, and then they pass it, and hopefully they cross the finish line and they win. Well, this process of making energy is something similar, except instead of runners, you have these different molecules. And instead of a baton being passed between runners, it's electrons. Now, the key is to make sure that the electrons get from one station to the next, and instead of coming to the finish line, they produce ATP. That's the winning piece. But when you have damaged mitochondria, what happens is, it's sort of like when you have these, another analogy might be the cellular towers. You know, if your towers for your cell phone are too far away, they drop your call, right? When they're stretched out far apart. When they're close together, you have a really good call. Well, that's the same thing in mitochondria. When you have too many electrons in the mitochondria escaping and you get that free radical damage, the stations that normally are tightly close to one another to allow good transfer of electrons, which allows ATP, which is cellular energy produced, when the mitochondria get damaged, those stations start expand. The mitochondria expand, and it means there's more space between the stations. This makes it difficult for the electrons to be transported from one station to the next, so you automatically get less ATP being produced. And also the downside is, now you have more electrons escaping, which turn into free radicals. See how the spiral continues? The more damaged it becomes, the wider apart the stations are. So the less ATP and the more damage you have. Here's a picture of what it really looks like. Here's a healthy mitochondria. Here's a damaged mitochondria with all that space in between. And that's why disease seems to follow this cyclical downward spiral. And it's really hard to interrupt it because everybody is eating so many carbs. They're not getting, which cause free radicals to be released. They're not getting the protection that they had previously from the superoxide dismutase because their body isn't making it anymore. And there's no source of it. So it's a really difficult situation for people to recover from. This is why I love spirulina so much, but it has to be, it can't be dried with high heat because that superoxide dismutase, I say, and we're going to talk about phycocyanin in a minute, it's like your two superheroes. SOD is another way to refer to it. It goes in there, it gets into the mitochondria, and it stops the free radical damage, but it's an enzyme. And so if you use high heat to dry it, it kills that capability. So most of the less expensive algae use high heat because they're lower priced, so they have to sell a lot more. And to do that, they cut corners, so they use high heat to get to market. So you'll still be getting protein and chlorophyll, but you're not probably going to get activated superoxide dismutase because it would be damaged by the high heat. The only way I can guarantee, and we don't use high heat, so you're in good hands with us at ENERGYbits, or you could use frozen spirulina for the same reason. It has not been exposed to high heat, so that superoxide dismutase will still be activated and will be able to get in there and protect your mitochondria. By the way, there are over 25,000 studies proving that superoxide dismutase prevents heart disease, Alzheimer's, inflammation. So the science is there. It's A, not been shared with you, and B, I don't think the scientists know that it exists in raw spirulina because the scientists like to talk to each other in their particular areas of expertise, and rarely does this information spill out to other clusters of specialty people. I just happen to be this, I call myself a citizen scientist. I just dug in there and learned all this stuff about metabolic health, and I learned about algae, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. Look at what superoxide dismutase does, and it happens to be in the highest concentration in spirulina. So it's a very protective nutrient that I think everybody in the world, well, I know they need, particularly after the age of 30, because you just don't have it. And it's alive and well in our spirulina.
That's super important. I love that. And you've touched a little bit, with the studies on heart health. I'd love to know a bit about K2 because it's something that, you can see like some supplements, if they're a good product, they might contain D3 K2 combination. A lot of people don't understand what K2 is doing and why it's better than K1 and what happens in the body with that. So I'd love for you to dive in and break that down. Yeah.
Well, it's perfect because I've been boasting about, I feel like a mother boasting about her children. In a lot of this conversation was about spirulina. Now we'll give chlorella a chance to shine because there's a higher amount of K2 in chlorella. So let's, for those who aren't aware of what this vitamin K2 is, and it was only discovered about 25 years ago, so don't feel bad. It's part of why we do these podcasts. So K2 is related to K1, and what it does is that it moves calcium out of soft tissue and into your bones. And you may say, well, what exactly is soft tissue? Well, soft tissue is your brain, your blood vessels, your organs, your skin, and it moves it into your bones and your teeth where it belongs. Because excess calcium in your soft tissue can be as damaging as free radicals. Arteriosclerosis is hardening of the arteries. Well, guess what's hardening? Calcium. Kidney stones, what are they made of? Calcium. So you don't want and we're taking D3 and people are taking calcium supplements and they think, oh, this is great for me. The problem is it's being absorbed everywhere except your bones. You need K2 to move it into your bones. And so here's the situation with K2. Virtually everyone in North America is deficit in vitamin K2. And how did that happen? Well, it only started about 25 to 30 years ago. Up until then, it was no problem because animals like cattle have an extra bacteria in their gut that allow them to take K1, which is in anything green, and convert it to K2. So when we were eating grass-fed animal protein, which up until the 60s or early 70s, all the cattle were raised on pastures. So when they ate the grass, they converted the K1 to K2. When we ate the meat, we got the K2. Perfect story. Problem is, in the early 70s, the farmers realized that if they fed the cattle corn and moved them into enclosures, they would get fat a lot faster and they would make a lot more money, which is what they did. Nothing green about corn. In fact, it's very acidic. Instantly, the supply of K2 in our regular diet disappeared. And they've done studies to find that's exactly when heart disease blew up. So unless you're eating a lot of grass-fed animal protein, I can almost assure you are deficit in K2. And that is causing buildup of excess calcium in your blood vessels, or it can, rather, not necessarily, but can. It damages your elastin and your collagen. Elastin are the structures that keep your skin taut. Think of them as like scaffolding on a building. And so when they get damaged, they collapse, and that contributes to wrinkles. And I have virtually no wrinkles. I think it's because I eat so much chlorella, so I get so much K2 that there's no excess calcium in my skin, that's for sure, and certainly not in my heart or my blood vessels, and it's all being moved into our bones. So now there are K2 is a very complicated vitamin. There's something called, they have these different categories, M4, M5, and M6, I think. And you can buy K2 supplements on the market now. They are made from fermented chickpeas. And that's fine, except the only type of K2 that can make it into your brain is, I think it's the M4. It's the type that you get from grass-fed animal protein and algae, because chlorella has your daily requirement of K2 and K1. Spirulina has a little less. You can also eat something called natto, which is just off the charts with K2, but it's a Japanese dish and it's really smart.
Fermented soybean, right?
It's really snarly. I don't know anybody that likes it, so it's not.
Yeah,
really
I don't know anybody that's going to have natto. It's not a tasty thing.
So here again, you can get your daily requirement for K2 just from the chlorella. Now the great thing is the chlorella, which is our recovery bits, I think it tastes pretty good. I mean, I chew it all day long. I put sea salt on it. I eat it with the pistachio nuts or macadamia nuts. It's delicious with macadamia nuts. You think you're eating potato chips. So, you're having a snack, but it's very healing at the same time. You're getting all that chlorophyll that's very cleansing. You're getting your daily requirement of K2. You're healing your gut. You're killing bacteria. It's very much a gut and healing and detoxing algae. So, and maybe you've had a few cocktails. You're celebrating something. Have 30 chlorella. You again get your K2. You get your chlorophyll. But you also pull out all that alcohol because your body converts it into toxins, and you will be sober in an hour and a half, I promise you, and you will never have a hangover, ever. We've had people write us and tell us that they saved their bachelorette party in Vegas. They were the only ones taking it. Nobody believes me until they take it. And then it's like, oh my gosh, you were right. So it's pretty cool. Mother Nature has cooked up this amazing food for us. All we do is grow it very carefully to preserve and dry it very carefully to preserve all the nutrients that were given to us by Mother Nature. It's her concoction. She's the one that gets all the credit. We're just the management company that makes sure that we give you the very best so it can be safe. That's why we do third-party lab tests here in the U.S. at an FDA-approved lab, and I'm not aware of anybody else that does it. I would like to point out, too, while we're talking about safety, there are some companies that grow algae in the ocean or the lakes, and I would urge you not to eat that or swallow it, however you take it, because you cannot keep microtoxins out of wild body of water. And I have some science that shows there were some algae companies growing their algae in Klamath Lake, and then they did these tests for microtoxins. And of course, it's in the algae because it was in the water. It's impossible to keep it out. That's why we grow ours in triple filtered spring mountain water. And microtoxins are very damaging to your brain, to your cellular structure. You just don't want them. They're released also from molds. So it's really bad news. So none in ours. We just got another lab test for the new batch of algae. Of course, there's no mycotoxins. So you just want to be careful when you are selecting your source of algae, because it's not like growing broccoli, or it's more like making wine. And wine is affected by the angle of the sun and all the production processes. Well, so is algae. That's why Taiwan is known for having the highest quality. It's a combination of the angle of the sun, and we grow ours there because it's very rigorously managed. We have the company that grows it for us has good manufacturing processes. It's a very tightly regulated industry. Again, it's an agricultural crop. It's as big as a crop as the beef industry is here. This is why it's so amazing to me that people still in America really still don't really know what algae is and what it does. And it's way more than just a superfood that you would put in your smoothie to just get some energy for the day. As I said, it has these medicinal properties that are extensive. And of course, the K2 is one of them.
Well, that's funny that you mentioned that, having it in a smoothie. That's literally the only way that I've consumed algae in the past, whether it's blue-green or chlorella, would be, for an extra $2 or whatever, you add it to the smoothie at a place that's, some organic shop, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And because it's just a one-off, like I can't tell what's going on, what's in the smoothie is changing the way, that I'm feeling, if I can notice it at all. So I'm very excited to get going on this. As far as a supplement and actually where it's a part of the training regimen, I've got a lot of things I can test this with, whether it's kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, running, and especially with sauna and ice bath and different things like that on the detox side. Talked a bit about how we would take this, if I've got, I order both of these, I've got it in my pantry, best practices as far as timing, when to have it on an empty stomach, those kind of things. Lay that out for us, because I guarantee a lot of people are going to jump on this train right now.
Yeah, the algae train. Well, we call it algae love because it loves you back in so many ways. So the good news is, well, I'll back up. A lot of people, including myself, cannot take supplements on an empty stomach. It makes me nauseous. And part of the reason I believe for that is because supplements are made from extracts that don't exist in nature. And then they use high heat to mash them all up. Well, first of all, algae is a food, which is from nature, and we're from nature. So when you take algae, you're giving your body something that it knows what to do with. It comes with all the other pieces, the enzymes and coenzymes and factors and cofactors. And it is great on an empty stomach. I know so many people, including myself, that work out fasted, but they take some spirulina because they want to supercharge their workout. So spirulina, take 10 tablets in the morning, 20 if you're going to go on a long run, 30 if you're doing a marathon, and then take more throughout your marathon. And again, you won't feel a jolt of energy. In fact, as I said, you may not even notice it, but what you will notice is that you're not hungry, you're not fatigued, your mental acuity is improved. No drama. It's the complete opposite of a stimulant. So really great on an empty stomach. If you want, you can have it with other foods. If you want, you can take it with water. You can take it with whatever you want. That's the other great thing. The tablets, again, if you don't like the flavor, and most people don't, I will admit it's the only downside of spirulina, don't like the flavor, you can swallow them. They're about the size of a baby aspirin. Just take a handful, swallow them down. There's no repeat. It's not like fish oil. And again, you don't need fish oil. When you take spirulina, you can replace fish oil, which, by the way, is mostly rancid by the time you get it because it's just the oxidation process. And here we're taking omega-3 to reduce inflammation. And I remind people, where do you think the fish get the omega-3 from? They get it from algae. So you can cut out the middleman and just get it straight from the algae as well. You can replace a multivitamin, which again, most of those multivitamins are made from extracts, and your body can't recognize them, so you absorb about 10%. So it's a very expensive pea. You will absorb 99% of the nutrients in algae, although the numbers are smaller because they don't have to be so high to cover up the fact that you're not absorbing it. You'll absorb everything in the algae. You can get rid of a CoQ10, a biotin. So you can save a lot of money getting rid of supplements and replace it just with one. So you're replacing simplicity, and you're also getting protein with the spirulina. The chlorella, again, you can take them any time of day, but we definitely want you to take them before night because of the detox repair cycle. Now, 10 tablets will give you the chlorophyll and the wellness benefits. But for detox, you need 20 or 30 tablets to be able to hold on to the toxins. It will pull toxins out of your blood in an hour and a half, as I mentioned earlier, like alcohol. But to detox your cells requires about a week, and to detox your organs is anywhere from a month to 4 months. Now, I don't want you to be appalled when you think of 30 tablets. Honestly, if you try chewing them with sea salt or pistachio nuts, they're really delicious. They don't stick to your teeth like the spirulina does, and so that would be my recommendation. Now, that's if you're healthy. If you have a condition of any kind, diabetes, heart condition, cancer, you're going to need double or triple that quantity until you get a clear diagnosis. And remember, algae is food, so there's no upper limit. Our NHL players take 75 spirulina before a game, and they take 75 chlorella because they want lots of focus on the ice. They need speed on the ice. They take 75 chlorella after the game because it pulls out the lactic acid, builds your immune system. Any athletes who are competing, when you get to that competition, you're all out, and it's hard on your immune system. So a lot of people get sick after a big competition. So the chlorella will help prevent that. And if you have any children, give them one or half a tablet for their age. So if they're 10, give them 5 of each a day. Give them, if they're 12, give them 6. And again, you can give them as much as you want. I've had holistic health practitioners see me at events, and they have children. This one little girl, she was, I think, 12, 14 months. She must have had 40 chlorella at my table. I took pictures of her. And Dr. Wolfson, if anyone knows Dr. Wolfson, the paleo doctor, heart doctor, it was his daughter. And they've been giving her chlorella since she was born. And she just loved this stuff. And she had all the green on her face. And after about 100, I said, I think she's had enough, because I didn't want her poop to be too green. But anyways, so definitely take them before a workout, spirulina, pre-workout, chlorella, post-workout. Spirulina in the morning for intermittent fasting, for getting out the door quickly. Chlorella at night for repair purposes and to pull out toxins or alcohol or lactic acid. The great thing is, you may take it for energy, but you're going to end up building your skin. Or maybe you take chlorella because you want to pull out toxins, but you're going to get all the vitamin K2 that you need. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Again, think of it as that, like a trust fund. It gives you everything you need so that later when you do eat, it's for pure taste enjoyment. It's for social purposes. It's not for getting the nutrients that you need. People have a hard time eating all that stuff, and also there's lots of calories and lots of fiber, and maybe as you get older you can't digest the fiber. So it's really, I think it's the answer to just about everything, and it's also eco-friendly, sustainable, so you're helping Mother Earth at the same time. It's the symphony, it's the orchestra of nutrition. All those supplements, they're like a grade 3 soloist. They give you a little something, it's not quite working. This gives you everything that you need, and it's been put together just like a great orchestra leader would put together a great symphony. This is the symphony of health. This is the key that unlocks access to great cellular energy, because the chlorella works with the spirulina because it pulls out toxins. And if the toxins are in the cell membrane or interfering with the ability for the mitochondria to generate ATP, you're going to have less energy there too. Everything comes down to that cellular energy formula, and anything that will help you generate more cellular energy is good for you. It's not a stimulant. It's your lifeline to health, really.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant. And you guys going to do a 20% discount code for everyone listening, yeah?
Yes. The code is Kyle. So Kyle. Come to ENERGYbits.com and just find the coupon box and just type that in, and you'll get your 20% off. We sell them in the large bags. We have these cool canisters that have a bag inside them, and you just shake out the tablets. You only buy a canister once, and then you refill it with the bags. We also have boxes of single servings. If you bought the bags with the 1,000 tablets in them, they come in large bags like this. Because there's so much nutrition, if you took 10 tablets a day, it works out to and they'll last 3 months. So these are the 1,000 tablet bags. Each one will last 3 months, and it will work out with your 20% discount code, $1 a day. $1 a day for your health, $1 a day for your mental acuity or your mitochondria. This protects your mitochondria. This protects your immune system. And I want to give you one more little tidbit about the spirulina that I didn't touch on. Remember I said there's the blue pigment, and it's called phycocyanin. Well, I want to tell you one really cool thing about that phycocyanin. So it doesn't exist in any other food in the world, and it kills cancer cells. I'd say that was pretty important, right? I think most of the deaths these days are from cancer or heart disease. And you say to yourself, well, how is that possible? And the chemotherapy companies already use phycocyanin in their treatments. I'm going to show you one experiment that was done. They took cancer cells, and they dyed them purple, and then they added phycocyanin to the petri dish. So they did a 24-hour relapse. So this is where the cancer cells started, and then they took a picture. Here's 24 hours later. This was the cancer cells. This was 24 hours later after phycocyanin was added to the petri dish. Almost all gone, right?
Yeah,
one of
incredible.
our tablets has 4,000 times more phycocyanin than was used in that experiment. That's pretty crazy. But here's the problem. Phycocyanin, like that superoxide dismutase, is damaged by high heat. So if your algae company is using high heat to dry the algae, you're not getting that benefit. And if you want to know how that works, remember I mentioned this thing called the electron transport chain. So here's these little molecules that pass the electrons around from one to the next, and then they generate ATP. Well, there's a little helper molecule, it's called cytochrome C, between station 3 and 4. Now, in a healthy cell, that blue pigment speeds up that little cytochrome C helper molecule. It's like having a Tesla. Vroom! Moves the molecule along, and it generates more ATP for you. And that's what you want. You want more cellular energy. So in healthy cells, that blue pigment does it. But if you have a cancer cell or something, or a zombie cell, which is called a senescent cell, this is a cell that is subdivided so many times it doesn't have anything left in it. All the DNA, all the telomeres are shortened. It's basically someone who's had a good run. They've had their full career. They should have been retired, but they're still coming to the office, knocking over garbage cans and causing a mess. That's a senescent cell. It's basically a dead cell, but doesn't die. So in a zombie cell or a cancer cell, that blue phycocyanin detects it. And instead of speeding up that molecule, it ejects it. And that molecule kills the cancer cell or the senescent cell. Intelligent food, ladies and gentlemen. You have to be intelligent to take this stuff, and it knows what to do in your body. Do not cheat yourself from this gift by Mother Nature. It's unbelievable what this stuff does. It's all backed in science. It's just that nobody told you about it because you think, well, if something's so amazing, why don't I know about it? It's because it's not grown here. 99% of algae is grown in Asia. 99% of it is consumed in Asia. They have no motivation to tell you about all these great things that algae does. And so here I am, I'm telling you. And it's documented in science. So now that you know how to spell some of these things, superoxide dismutase or phycocyanin, Google them and you'll see that I'm telling you the absolute truth, except that nobody else has until now. And I encourage you all to be citizen scientists. Dig in and find out all the science you want about this great stuff, and you'll live as long as I'm going to. Me and Dave Asprey, I think we're going to be over 100. So I want people to be living well and living long. And it's just, algae's not new, it's just new to you. So it's good stuff.